Grace and peace to you in the love of God. I am honored to be here with you tonight, and I bring you greetings from the Covenant Mennonite Fellowship in Sarasota, Florida. It's also an honor to be wearing pink. It reminds me of the pastor at the Columbus Convention who in 2009, seeing me early in that week in a bright pink shirt, gave me a thumbs up and shook my hand and said, "Real men wear pink." And whether he agreed with me or not at the end of the week, I don't know, because I didn't talk to him afterward, but I did say to him at that moment, "Brother, you're right, real men and women do wear pink." If you attended the Meadow Neighbors gathering in Sarasota last November, I hope you will indulge me in using just a little bit of that homily tonight. Let me begin with a beautiful coming out story. When author and Pulitzer Prize winner Alice Walker was 8 years old, she had an accident. A confident and vivacious child, she and her brothers were playing with BB guns when a pellet hit her in the right eye. She became permanently blinded in that eye and was left with what she saw as a hideous scar. For 6 years, she didn't raise her head, and she never lifted up her eyes. Her life literally changed overnight. After the accident, not only her grades, but her confidence dropped dramatically. Kids fell into the normal pattern of bullying and teasing her because she was different. Almost every night she would stand in front of her mirror and rant and rave at her eye. She told her eye that she hated it and demanded that it heal itself and change. Alice's coming out moment occurred when she was 27 and caring for her 3-year-old daughter, Rebecca. Even at 27, she still found herself preoccupied with that white scar across her eye. Since the birth of her child, she worried about what would happen when Rebecca discovered her mother's eye was different than other people's eyes. Quoting from her book, In Search of Our Mother's Garden, Ms. Walker says, Rebecca's favorite television program was called The Big Tomorrow. It began with a picture of the earth as it appears from the moon. After the show, I was putting Rebecca down for a nap. She suddenly focused on my eye. Something inside me cringed and got ready to protect itself. Rebecca then studied my face intently. She even held my face maternally between her dimpled little hands. And then, looking every bit as serious and lawyer-like as her father, she said, as if it may just possibly have slipped my attention, "Mommy, there's a world in your eye." And then gently, but with great interest, she said, "Mommy, where did you get that world in your eye?" In that instant, Walker writes, most of the pain that I have been carrying for 15 years vanished. Crying and laughing, I went to look in the mirror and thought, yes, there is a world in my eye, and it is possible for me to love it. And in fact, for all it has taught me of shame and anger and inner vision, I do love it. It took the eyes of a 3-year-old child for Alice Walker to lift up her eyes and see the beauty within herself. The beauty that God always saw. Tonight, I encourage you to lift up your eyes and see a world of love, acceptance, and grace within yourself. Let us lift up our eyes and see a world of love and light within all of those we are meeting, greeting, discerning with, debating with, and worshiping and serving with this week. The words from storyteller Matthew that we heard this evening are a first century way of saying basically the same thing Alice Walker's daughter said. Immediately before our gospel reading in Matthew 5, Jesus congratulates those who are considered unacceptable and outcasts because they walk the path of truth and integrity. You, Jesus tells them, are the salt of the earth. You are the light of the world. You are beautiful. And in you, God is revealing light to others. Scholars tell us that it was a difficult time for many of the people of Matthew's post-Easter community, who were devout Jews following this new way of Jesus. And they were being kicked out of their communities of worship by other devout Jews, who said that these followers of Jesus and fellow Jews were no longer truly faithful or acceptable to God. So Matthew reminded them of Jesus' words to give them hope in the midst of intense struggle. Now, as human nature goes, some things haven't changed much in 2,000 years. Persons who are lesbian, gay, bisexual, or transgender, and their allies know the sting of rejection and face accusations that we're not truly faithful or acceptable to God. Now, it's not my intent or my purpose or desire tonight to cast aspersions on anyone who would disagree with us or seek purity over justice. My only hope tonight is to encourage us, in the midst of struggle, to express our gratitude for those who seek to be salt and light in the most authentic ways that we know how, to celebrate and bless you for seeing a world in your own eye and in the eye of others. Now, to some, God's love in the way of Jesus is scandalous, because it calls us to affirm the light of God in those we're not supposed to. God's love is also frustrating because it challenges us to reimagine what relationships and Christian community are really about. It calls us, in Paul's words from 2 Corinthians and the theme of the official Pittsburgh Convention, to be ambassadors, to cross bridges and boundaries of faith and culture and ethnicity and status and affectional orientation or sexual orientation and theology, to be salt and light by offering words of peace and actions of love to our neighbors, our friends, and even our enemies. God outrageously calls us to see a world in the other's eye, to affirm the humanity in those who make us uncomfortable or who may even wish us harm. It's not easy to do, trust me, I know. But it is what God and God's ways are about. Which makes me so grateful for the work, the hard work of PinkMenno, the open letter readers and signers, Connecting Families Network, Menno Neighbors, Brethren Mennonite Council, congregations in exile, and other leaders and communities of welcome and acceptance who live and practice the inclusive and reconciling mission of Jesus. Your work may seem scandalous, but take heart, because Jesus was a troublemaker too. You are the salt of the earth. You are the light of the world. Like Alice Walker's daughter, you see a world in the eyes of those who are told they are less than, unacceptable, or outcast. And you see a world of hope and possibility in the eyes of those who disagree with you. For your courage and your passionate desire to cross bridges and to be God's ambassador for equality and reconciliation, I give thanks. And on behalf of myself and the Covenant Mennonite Fellowship, I thank you for helping to sustain us with your friendship and your prayers and to letters, and your emails, and your phone calls, and your visits, and your advocacy on our behalf, and for lifting us up on our hope portals. God's radical love calls us to be loudly, boldly, unmistakably pink, and to work for change, even when hope seems dim. Just 4 days ago, my congregation finally received the official demand in a letter from the Southeast Mennonite Conference that we must affirm and align with the position that God intends marriage to be a lifelong covenant between one man and one woman. A position that my conference says is a fundamental theological understanding that unites and holds them. If we do not, and if we don't voluntarily withdraw from the conference, we will be expelled. And it makes me sad that with all of these, so many other things that we have in common as brothers and sisters in Anabaptists, that one sentence in an imperfect document created by human hands and minds will determine for conference leaders and delegates whether or not we will remain family. But crazy me, I refuse to consume. I remember the conversation I had not too long ago with an African-American pastor in the Southeast who knew my situation and said to me, "Randy, do we love the same Jesus?" I said, "Yes, we do." "Do we worship the same God?" I said, "Yes, we do." "Well," he said, "we can be brothers and worship together." And that is an 85-year-old sister from another congregation in Sarasota who told me, "You know, not all of us in Sarasota agree with what is happening to you and your congregation." And I told my pastors. It does seem that Mennonite conferences in general are taking a less rigid position towards actions of welcoming and inclusive congregations. The recent decision by New York State for marriage equality, the amazing work of the Trevor Project, in response to bullying and suicides of gay and lesbian teens, reminds us that equality is rolling on. God's Spirit is present and moving in the overwhelming scientific and medical knowledge that exists today, pointing to the inescapable conclusion that affectional orientation or sexual orientation is not a moral choice. Millions and millions of 21st century Christians are embracing the ways that God is working and speaking today through science and psychology, new biblical scholarship, and ethics. And seeing this bigger picture helps us to see that it is getting better. Slowly, sometimes at a glacial pace, but it is getting better. At the same time, it takes you and me to be salt and light. To not only be inclusive, but to act for inclusion. It is your hands and your hearts and your voices that will make the difference. A favorite quote from Bishop Desmond Tutu offers a fierce conviction. If you are neutral in situations of injustice, you have chosen the side of the oppressor. If an elephant has its foot on the tail of a mouse and you say that you are neutral, the mouse will not appreciate your neutrality. So hope lives. People like you step forward and offer your hands, hearts, and voices for equality and justice and reconciliation. For every faith community, hope is never a static or passive thing. It is dynamic, active, directive, and life-sustaining. And so in the spirit of Psalm 121, I ask, where does my hope come from? My hope comes from those who model the character of God, and despite oppression and rejection, continue to love and to bless. My hope comes from those who speak out and say to any form of injustice or oppression that we are all God's children and all of us deserves a place at the table. We're here tonight to renew a common hope, the hope that someday a bridge may be crossed and we will no longer be us and them, but that someday simply we will be we. That common hope is being achieved by an older generation who has struggled long, yet continues to speak for acceptance and equality. That common hope is being achieved by a younger, vibrant, and openly and unashamedly pink generation who are leaps and bounds more accepting, who say this is not even an issue for us, who count among their friends, family, and co-workers without batting an eyelash persons who are openly gay, lesbian, bisexual, and transgender. Our common hope is becoming a reality as more and more states and cities adopt anti-discrimination policies and make civil unions and gay marriage legal. Our common hope is being celebrated as more and more faith communities release unhelpful traditions, dogma, and doctrine, and embrace a new paradigm of inclusiveness and the reality that, as our covenant church sign states, God loves everyone, no exceptions. Our common hope is renewed when we gather as an affirming community to say yes to inclusion, yes to equality, yes to love, and yes to the reconciling work that God is doing among us in this very room. It is getting better. May you look with the eyes of love and grace and see a big, beautiful, wonderful world in your eyes and in the eyes of others. I honor the you that God intended you to be this day. I'd like you to take a moment, hold your hands out in front of you.